we'll talk a bit about art and a holiday, which is the theme of the current exhibition here. And I think I wanted to kind of focus on this theme for a number of reasons. One is being based in a location where a lot of the industry and things around me are tourism. You inevitably reflect upon what that is. I remember very well one time I was doing a residency in Dubrovnik in Croatia. What was really interesting there is all of the other artists avoided the tourist area, which was, you know, the main part, because it felt fake, inauthentic, ugly, commercial. And it was visceral to avoid anywhere the tourists touched. But I started becoming interested in what the tourists were doing. More and more, I started following them because it seemed to me there was a story there. And if you're interested in space, in meaning, then it's worth understanding what the tourists are doing, because that's the main way, you know, people are interacting with space when it's an unfamiliar space like that. The more I started looking at the tourists, the more I realized there was diversity within their behavior and a lot of stories, and they brought a lot of their normal life to their tourism. And when making art, I don't always like to go in the direct way to a topic. I think it's often more interesting to look around the sides, and around the sides you see things less prepared, less guarded. And so approaching kind of this through the lens of tourism seemed to me quite a good way to kind of look at the way people were understanding space. And because it was not art, a good kind of material to use for art, if you see what I mean. So I found it to be quite a useful way to kind of open up, and that within tourism, it's like any other subject. It's like the whole world. You can see the economics of it. You can see world politics in there. You can see personal dreams, nightmares, and all of these different layers if you kind of start looking for them and break down tourism from being this fake monolith into being just another human activity. And final thing I remember is that when I was a student, I had a psychology professor who was telling me that he specialized, they all had to kind of specialize in some animal kind of and look at the nervous system. And he specialized in a type of worm that is found off the sea in Essex. And so he spent many years after he graduated doing postdoctoral research in mud flats of Essex. And his friend who he was studying with specialized in a bird which is found in Hawaii. And their careers took very different directions, where his friend was often going on research trips to Hawaii while he was still stuck in the mud in Essex. And so there's a little bit of self-interest here. Having an interest in tourism and art has ended up leading me to nicer places than if I had an interest in, let's say, prisons and art.
As you know, Bill, I'm an artist and also a co-founder of Allenhead's Contemporary Arts. And our building not only hosts, well, there's two different types of people that actually come to ACA. One, of course, are the artists who come in residence with one purpose, and the other group of people that come to the schoolhouse to stay are tourists, holidaymakers. So I've seen the two very different usage or purposeful arrivals into a place. And so it's a curious one, yeah. And I think I mentioned in the two different types of people, because the moment you decide that you are a something, a tourist or an artist, you come prepared to and equipped to behave in a very specific kind of way, as if directed by your title. And so that got me thinking about the words that we use, like holiday, and the fact that it originates from an Old English word which was halig deg, or holy day. So once again, if you think backwards in time to the origins of the word holiday, holy day, there's a functionality about it, that it's given purpose and driven by your faith and your belief that you should have this day off for recreation. And if you hyphenate the word recreation, it becomes recreation, which is also, I find, very interesting. And so so that's taken me to another place altogether. That's the world of cinema, and the great film with Arnold Schwarzenegger called Total Recall, where he goes to a company called Recall Limited or Incorporated, and basically you get injected with a memory, so you don't actually have to stop work or go somewhere. You can be injected with a memory which makes you believe you've actually had a holiday, or even an action in his case. And I think that's kind of interesting, pulling that one in to my way of thinking, because there are two words I really struggle with in my life. One is holiday, and the other one is artist. To say that I'm going to go on holiday is really tricky for me, because I can't take a holiday. I can't take any recreational time away from being an artist, because it's actually built into me. I can't help it. It's not like I'm an electrician or a plumber or a builder, where I take time off and become something else. It's an inherent part of me, being an artist. I can't help it. And so, yeah, it's important to bring it forward in time to now. And I've got a number of things I've written down here. That a holiday now is seen as free time, time to spare, idle hours, time off, breathing space, relief, peace, quiet, relaxation, and getting pissed. So that brings me back to my problems with me personally having a holiday, is that I do all of those things all of the time as me. I can't take a holiday from those things.
Because you're already on holiday all the time anyway.
I can't help it.
我很同意 Alan 的说法。
Alan, I agree with you.
就是当我们说到假期这个概念，我因为 COVID-19
yeah, due to COVID, I returned to China from America.
Yeah,
3 years ago, and due to COVID, I haven't been talking about holiday or been out for 3 years. But I have expectations and hopes for it.
我同时也在做工作室，其实我也是以艺术家的身份。
And I'm an artist as well. I'm running a commercial photography studio. So it seems like I don't have a holiday, but I do have a holiday. The way holiday feels to me is not because of the location or where I am. It's rather how do I feel, my emotional or spiritual state. There's a certain dilemma between artist and tourist, but to her, tourist is more ephemeral. It's more like a tag on Instagram. It's more temporal. But artist, that is who she is. That is eternal. That is how she feels and sees the world. Even though she's out there touring other places, she make contact with the space through her artistic spirit. She was in Taiwan at the airport, and there's a sudden draft of smell that reminds her of the air in Indonesia. because she used to be there, did intern in Indonesia. That struck her that as an artist, all your experiences, all your memories are saved in a bank, an archive that you can use them and with her, full heart to create art. So she merged the two identities, an artist and a tourist. She merged these two identities into her art.
I was listening to that, and it struck me that one of these things which was a condition of being an artist until COVID was international mobility, and that this was one of the ways people almost sort of try to measure their success. I don't think it's a terribly good way, by the way, but nonetheless, as artists, people would try to be internationally mobile and visible. And there was this kind of accumulation of experiences and locations, which is very much like a tourist. And often their engagement in the place was not much more meaningful than that of a tourist. And COVID brought an end to all of that. No more holidays, no more art residencies. Well, you're lucky that things have picked up again elsewhere, but here in China, we're still stuck.
Can I come in here? I think the COVID thing is a very interesting, an interesting way to actually look in at perhaps how we feel about time off, isolation, quiet. The village I live in is a population of around about 200 people. And COVID, when it first started off, the first thing I noticed was the silence that I hadn't experienced in 27 years of living there. And it's, as Bill knows, it's a very quiet place already, but this was alarmingly silent with no movement, nothing happening. But it also flagged something up, which was, since probably in my early 20s, I've worked, I suppose, on a treadmill of so-called professional activity. And until COVID, that had been unrelenting. And COVID privileged me with time to actually figure out who I was myself. And I think that's when I began thinking of myself as human rather than artist, rather than director of Alan Head's Contemporary Arts. Forgetting qualifications, I became human again and realized that all of the activities that I have in my life, everything that happens is based on my interests, and it's on my, you talk about memory. Well, all humans are built on their experiences through life, as well as their learning, their education. So it's a very big subject, an interesting subject. I do think it comes back to that titling of, if you know you're going somewhere as a tourist, your behavior will be different to just going as a human. Not many of us are able to or privileged to go back to being human.
What Alan just talked about, that because of COVID, he and some of us went back to our natural self, returning human. It chimes with her idea of being an artist and touring places, because it's a journey, inner journey, that touring places as an artist, and what COVID caused our lives. that we, but we are more reminded of who we are, what we want as a human.
I think disruption is not always a bad thing, because you're right, it causes us to kind of have a new look at what we have been doing routinely.
That recreation.
That what?
That recreation.
Yes, yeah, that we can actually choose and recreate do it in a different way. So we probably wouldn't choose it, but it is actually good to have a kind of a break from what you're doing, even if that break is kind of being locked inside your apartment with having to kind of like order, you know, your food to be delivered to the door. It is a type of break, I'll say.
Where there's tourism, there's economic the economy thrives in that place. What the tourists want is a slow tempo lifestyle, but what the locals want is a fast-growing economy. So there's the paradox. And it's just like what we experience right now. During COVID, we slow down everything, but we want everything to go back to normal. We want a fast-paced life, but maybe that's a good thing in a larger scale. That to slow down, take a break is a good thing.
My sense is that it's easy to have that point of view if you have economic stability and relatively lenient conditions and no health kind of issues. If, however, you're locked down for 100 days plus, as people are in Xinjiang, and without money, then you probably think differently about the whole situation. Or if you're in Britain when there was lots of people trying to, not enough hospital beds for people and people were dying, you probably think differently about the holiday. It's not sort of so easy to regard it as a kind of holiday or a break from the routine. It's a new type of crisis.
I think, Bill, you've just touched on something there. And that if you and I, if we all four of us decide we're going to go on holiday in the first 2 weeks of August in 2023, and we know where we're going to go, we will each individually, coming from different places, know how much it's going to cost to get there and how much money we're going to need for that 2-week holiday, and the things that we are going to want to go and see and do. So there's a real there's a tendency for tourists to actually have an itinerary before they actually depart to go somewhere. It'll be planned out. They'll know the kind of environment they're walking into, whether it'll be a quiet time with not many people or a really crazy time, like somewhere in southern Spain. Yeah, let's rave it. So, but there's that preparation that takes place, and that period of time, there's the excitement of, yes, we've all booked. Then there's a period of hard work to make the money. And then there's the excitement of boarding the plane to get to that place. And then the meeting together. Everything is pumped up. Everything is pumped up. And the likelihood, in our experience in Allen Heads, is that when people do come together on that first night, they get hammered, totally fucking hammered. And then the second night, they'll get a little bit hammered. And then if they're with us for a week, things get calmer and calmer and they start being themselves. And mostly they'll have a good time, but sometimes fights break out or disagreements break out and they become people again. So the tourism thing is a very interesting one. It's like a build building towards expectations and not always being happy with the results.
Yeah, there's the problem when the holiday goes on too long and it becomes your life.
Yeah.
or the opposite problem, when the holiday is so intense that you need to have a holiday when you get back home to get over the holiday.
And of course, nobody was prepared for COVID. There was no preparation. And we didn't know what to expect.
It's just like taking a journey, and during the journey something shows up, like COVID in our lives. We have to adjust ourselves and readjust ourselves, measure it and remeasure it. So in a way, touring, taking a journey, and something comes up is like what COVID shows up in our life.
I think the conversation is really interesting from my perspective of being voyeuristic. I like to look in, you know, and I think we all tend to look in as artists, and tourism, because I don't feel that comfortable with the idea. It's almost like looking at someone else's ritual, you know, and I think sometimes it's like knowing the difference in behavior. If you know that you're going to a christening, if you know you're going to a wedding, or if you know you're going to a funeral, there'll be three very different types of preparation that you have to go through in order that your mind is in the right place to behave in the correct way. And I think tourism is not dissimilar in that we prepare ourselves for the holiday that's been planned.
I think actually it's more diverse than that. And there are different reasons and frames which bring people into to travel and finally tourism. So yes, there's the classic kind of, you know, they get transported to a place in the sun for a week and lie on a beach. But for example, here in Xiamen, there's a big conference center. And you get large groups of people who come for work, but when they come for work, they also kind of don't work that hard. And there's a kind of tourism side to this whole conference culture, which the city promotes in a big way. Academic conferences as well often have the air of being a kind of a little bit of a naughty kind of excuse for tourism at the same time. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of this kind of which happens not within the classic frame of somebody with a hat which says, I'm a tourist, come and make money out of me, but rather within other frames as well. But it becomes the way people understand travel. For example, you know, great piece of literature, the Canterbury Tales. In some ways, it's about a pilgrimage from London to Canterbury. But you can read between the lines for the different people. They're telling stories and they're having a good time on the journey. So it's religious holiday making before the idea of holiday took place, and it's a great novel. It's a great work of art.
It's kind of going back to the what I said earlier, well, at the beginning, really, the origins of the word holy day. That it was a period of time which was purposeful and functional, and relating to a very specific act, being faith or religion. And of course, people have always traveled for different reasons, like you say, for conference, for, you know, we're still kind of doing it. And perhaps there's been more freedom than ever for, you know, large numbers of people to travel. And the tourist tag is a very, very different tag to the conference tag. And, you know, you and I'm sure we've all done them both. But it is kind of interesting that perhaps the traveler can come with so many different guises, you know, masks. And to go back to what I was saying about knowing your ritual, I think it's important to recognize that when people do travel, they know why they're traveling, and they know how to behave in a correct way. If you went to a conference with a room full of artists and academics, and you walked in with your holiday sombrero on and funny hooting things, I'm sure that wouldn't go down so well.
My sense of where you're getting there is that also on the opposite way, if you go into making art and not as a human but as an artist, it's quite possible it'll be a bit boring.
Yes. Yes. I think it can be a mistake to enter any world with preconceived ideas of what you're going to be doing, how you're going to react.
I wonder if this point, you know, it's interesting here to hear Kito, your own kind of reflection upon either the language of which we've been doing, and if there's any differences between the English and the Chinese, or indeed your own experience of travel or the lack of it more recently.
I like Alan said, I partially found who I am because of COVID, because everything died down. I have more time. I wake up 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning to see the same trail, go to the same lake almost every morning, even though there's snow. And I see rabbits, deer, roses that blossom and died, and I take pictures, within nature, and brought my friends there taking portraits. That's a very meaningful and private time. And sometimes in the morning, there's Orthodox Jewish guy chanting in the morning. That struck me as a very holy image. At other times, there are some people canoeing on the lake, and I never met them, but every time we saw each other, we just waved. And this kind of estranged, isolated quietness has an intimacy. The intimacy towards or to nature and to other people is respectful, which I enjoyed a lot. And I'm a very shy person, so I don't like to social. So COVID can be a good thing for me. Yeah.
Can I just ask, was that the lake in New York?
Yes, Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn? Because
I know Brooklyn very well.
yeah, Alan also was in Brooklyn.
Really?
Also, yeah, we've all got a
I live in
between the
wait. Marine Park. Marine Park.
Marine
Mm-hmm.
Marine Park. It's very
I lived on Bergen Street and 4th Avenue.
Oh, that's way beyond my
I live in downtown Brooklyn.
downtown.
Yeah, that's a fascinating place. Yeah.
Back in the day, I was weirdly in the Upper East Side through instead of
That's a
coincidence.
better place. Come on.
Yes, I know.
This is another kind of holiday, you know. The fact that we've all shared the same area, the same place, that we can start describing bits of it, and while we're enjoying it ourselves, it's also like vacation that, that we're listening to one another. We're in re-enlightening or sparking something from our past. And actually, I can show you a spark from my past. because I'm actually sat in my parents' house, and this is where I grew up. So I'm having a holiday back in time.
Yeah, it's always kind of very special experience to go back to the hometown if you've left it, because yeah, well, actually, it's rather different here than in the UK. Normally, if people go back to their hometown here, it's all changed, and if you go back to your hometown in the UK, nothing much has changed at all. It's a like complete contrast.
Apart from yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've changed. I think we changed. So going back to your home, I think that's the side of things that I'm noticing back in Swansea, that I've changed. So my reading of it is different.
And that's the funny thing when people take a holiday back to a place they had a holiday in before, and they're trying to repeat experience.
Yes.
But they themselves have changed, and so there's a sort of nostalgia for something which is no longer there. I find that quite interesting. I see that with friends who kind of go to Glastonbury again, but they're no longer 19 and tripping their head off on kind of all kinds of psychedelics. They have kind of like a family, but they're still sort of in name, kind of like sort of dancing till 3 a.m. and kind of going through the feeling of being 19 or 20 again.
Yes, China has changed a lot. She first came to Xiamen 8 years ago. The economy and culture changed so much. He used to take a ferry from Zhongshan Road, take a ferry to Gulanyu Island. They rerouted the whole thing, and they're changing so fast. Transportation has changed.
For me, what's just been talked about is perhaps, and it's through the work that I've been doing more recently at Allen Heads. We have an observatory there, so I'm looking at the night sky, and it's the realization that, in part, comes from the realization that the sky above my house in Allen Heads is the same sky that people are looking at in Ukraine while they're being bombed. And maybe this is a large jump to one side from tourism, but it does flag up the importance of realizing that it's the context that you are in personally that changes the appearance of a place. The context of your life that changes your engagement with a place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The city I spoke about, Dubrovnik, at the beginning, that was also under siege from the Bosnian Serb army during the breakup of Yugoslavia in the 90s. They went from being a kind of tourist kind of mecca to being kind of a city under siege and bombardment, and its medieval walls were actually very practical.